We founded Attomarker Limited from my research group at the University of Exeter about 3 years ago, and we've been developing work in the biotechnology sector, specifically looking at diagnosis of disease from blood chemistry. We have a new technology that will look at many biomarkers in your blood at once, many things at the same time. So it's not just a simple measure of what's good and what's not, but maybe a whole profile of your health. So far we have done some preliminary developmental work to look at how the technology will look like as a product and what's going to be required to take that product to market. So when I started in business, I'm an academic and I didn't know what a business means. So I had a non-executive director in my first company who told me that in Silicon Valley you need 4 essential factors. One is management, the other is a market, then your technology, and then the finances. And in that order, significantly management is the most important thing you can do in starting a company. So the first thing I realized as a professor is I needed somebody who knew how to run a company, and that was the chief executive. It was then his job to manage the interaction with the business sector, to manage all the business processes, and then employ the people as we needed them. So I was there to help with the development and the research of the product, but I knew nothing about marketing, I knew nothing about sales. And so you need that skill set to be established in the company. But it's going to evolve over time, so it's not as if you put the same people in place throughout the lifetime of the company. You're going to certainly need more sales and marketing people at the end than you are at the beginning. Even if you have a good idea and you can make a change to the way something happens, it doesn't follow that's going to sell into a market. You've got to identify the market need. And for technology in particular, you've got to make sure that the market is pulling your technology into the marketplace. A customer pull is much stronger than a technology push onto the market. So if you can identify who your market's going to be, that they have a need for your product, that's the quick win, that's the easy way in. You may do more difficult things later on, but look for the customer pull to start with.
What's been your experience in that scenario?
So,
looking at the market?
In the diagnostics market, I've got to make sure the clinicians will find my technology useful. We have to establish clinical utility. We have to establish safety. All these ideas need to be there so the clinician will say, I want this technology because it's going to help with the outcome of the patient treatment. So establishing clinical utility is all part of identifying the market. And once you've done that in the UK, that could be huge because of the size of the NHS. And globally, that's a massive market because we're all humans and need healthcare. So the product of the company, or in our case, the technology, has got to work. It's got to do the job that you want it to do. And it has to be qualified to do that. So especially in the medical sector, it's got to meet all the regulatory requirements. It's got to be CE marked, it's got to be NICE approved, it's got to be FDA approved, so that it works the right time, at the right place, confidently and with consistency. So validation of the technology or the product is very important by the customer. Finally, finance. And it's very important not to underestimate this. It's very bad to go back to an investor and say, I've now run out of money, I need more money. It's much easier to go back to an investor and say, I didn't spend all your money and yet I've met all the milestones. So make sure there's sufficient funds to deliver the product to the marketplace and deliver the returns and the sales. So you can go from the bench to sales and positive cash flow in the company. And not to be frightened about how big the bill is. So the objective is to make money, no more than that. You must remove the idea that you're doing interesting science or helping people. At the end of the day, the business objectives of the company and the director's responsibility is to make money for the shareholders. And so you have to make sure that you have sufficient funds to deliver that return. So Attomarker has a big risk profile up front. We need to spend a lot of money to establish the clinical utility of our technology. And that's high risk, but massive return. So we need an investor that's going to buy into the idea that they're going to share the risk at the beginning. It's going to be managed, so if we get along the development cycle and we don't meet some milestones and the technology falls over, then the project stops. So you should fail early and fail often in the delivery process of your product. And not be frightened to pull the plug on the technology if it's not working, or if the market is not there, or in fact if any part of the business plan is not evolving as it should do. The Southwest is a great place to live and good for your staff, and they like living down here, and it's good for building the technology. But if you're going to launch a product nationally, you've got to manage the fact that you're in a corner of the country and you need to have a presence nationally. And so that needs to be in the business plan. Is it a hurdle? Yes, investors don't like coming down from London, it's a long way. But if the idea is good and you're up in London, you have a presence in London, then the location is actually not very critical. You just need to manage your national strategy. Part of the problem with being on your own in the West Country is that there's no reputation for investment, no reputation for spin-out companies, technologies in particular. If there were a cluster of us, say around the University Science Park, then investors know that there's a good opportunity down here, there's more than one opportunity to assess, so they'll come down and look at all of us. And we can help with each other, we know what different investors are doing at each time, We can help with different business contributions, maybe even help with different business models if there's sufficient trust. But to develop a nucleus of activity with some momentum, that would then make life a little easier for all the companies in the area. So the Science Park should be good news for all of us. The single biggest lesson I learned trying to be an academic entrepreneur is to not be a businessman. I know what I'm good at, I can do science. If you have a good idea, then you need the skill set to bring that to marketplace. So it doesn't follow that because you can invent something, because you can design something, that you can then sell it or run the company based upon it. So knowing what you don't know is probably the single biggest take-home message in academic entrepreneurship. And it's going to require 8 days a week of work and at least 72 hours a day. And you need to be plucky, you need to stick at it, you need to have some certain amount of tenacity to take the ideas and to take the knockbacks and to go further forward. You need to manage your risk, and if it's not working, you need to stop. Maybe it was a good idea, maybe it was just never meant to be. Your objective is to get that product into the marketplace and to make money quickly. Don't assume you can do all of that, and look for the quick route to market. Look for the easy win. Don't worry about doing it all yourself. Should you partner with somebody? Should you look at who the big players in the market are? And maybe it's easy not to have a market presence, but just sell it all through a major store or through an existing player in the market. So try and do the things that are easy rather than the big challenges straight away. In my first company, the market's really sewn up by some key players, and I didn't think there was going to be a route to market at all. That was a real barrier for us. But somebody came along and bought the company who had the access to that market. So for a long time we struggled to find the way in, and then we just got bought by somebody that solved all those problems.